What's up? Welcome back. I'm John Sark, MovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and today I'm going to talk about flow. Go with the flow. um, Only a few people will get that reference, and if you did, and if you don't click subscribe, come on now. Um, so yeah, I'm a blind film critic. That's really important here. I need you to. I Hi, I am John, and I'm blind, and this is Flow. Just, I want you to hear that again. So, I consider everything. I got into film criticism because I love movies. So, I believe artists work on movies, and I want to see them. I want to talk about them. However, I'm also now blind. Was not always blind, so I understand the difference between the sighted experience in cinema and the blind experience, and I'm trying to bridge that gap and fight for accessibility and advocate for it. This is a great film to talk about. Flow has no audio description, and Flow has no dialogue. It's not even in another language. It has no dialogue. So I listened to sound effects for roughly 90 minutes. That is what I did. Because this film has no accessibility, it's also running in theaters with no audio description. So I didn't even bother really poking people about it, because it's like, if you're putting it out theatrically with no audio description, then it just doesn't exist. Because pretty much that's the one place where you're guaranteed to get it. And then it's like porting it from there onto DVD or VOD is where it starts getting sketchy. But it's rare that you see a film that didn't have audio description in theaters, new anyway, and then suddenly they decide, oh well, we should do the right thing. So basically, this is a film that had absolutely no consideration for blind or low vision audiences, and yet the whole film is basically inaccessible to us. So it's just like, what? I've listened to some people talk about reviews of the film. What I heard were animal noises, nature sounds, what sounded like a cat drowning for like 30 minutes. Like, I felt like that cat was fighting water forever. And just like, it sounded like a kitten too. It was almost like it was almost a terrible experience, because I was like, somebody pull the cat out of the fucking water. You just hear like like, like those gurgling noises that like water makes, and then you hear this. I was like, good. Can somebody get this cat out of the water? Like, is this whole movie gonna be is this movie about a cat drowning? Like, what is this movie about? Um, Eventually, yes, he got out of the water, and adventure ensues. But I didn't really know what kind of adventure, because this is one of those, and it's perfectly fine. Like, but you know what? There are like nature documentaries and stuff, and they're narrated. Um, there are live action films that have uh, next to no dialogue in them, and they have audio description. John Woo's film Silent Night last year had almost no dialogue, and was audio described. So you could make that choice. You just have to make the choice. And I think it's really important here to point that out, because this film has been pegged as potentially taking the best animated feature win. And I don't think it should have that honor without being accessible at a wide pace. Last year's Boy and the Heron was released and did not have audio description theatrically. Luckily, Max put audio description on it. So that was a blessing in disguise, that it ended up getting audio description for its home release, that Max did the right thing. But it's very upsetting and very disconnected for us to see these films being lauded with praise, while also nobody's really addressing the lack of accessibility in films like Godzilla and Minus One and Boy and the Heron, which both won last year without having audio description, despite not competing. I could see maybe them not wanting to make that call for international feature, even though I think they should. And I'm still reviewing international films, and but there's no real reason to not have it in other categories. The requirement of accessibility, if you want to compete in other categories, I don't understand it. So I don't think a film should be allowed to compete in animated feature without being accessible to all viewers. That's my hot take. Um, so I've listened to people talk about how there are no humans in this, and it's in this sort of interesting world where you can see the remnants of human society, but there are no humans. There are these giant like cat structure, like statue things. So it's like this world that doesn't, it has no explanation to it. And so sighted audiences don't necessarily know. It's like, well, imagine what I don't know. I didn't know there were these structures and these cats, these things, and I had no idea what was going on for the duration of this film. So I know the studio's probably like, why the fuck did we give this guy the screener? But at the same time, I could have gone to the theaters and seen this, and then I would have had an even angrier reaction for having paid to see this film. So at least I'm coming at you with a nice sort of like, please put audio description on your movies, and a plea just to sort of other films of this ilk. Last year, Robot Dreams was nominated as a silent film without any audio description. Great. It's like, I'd love to see these films. I'd love to be able to appreciate the story that you've told here, but unfortunately, there is none. There's no audio description here, and I kind of wonder if there is any audio description at all. Like, even it's hard to say in its native language because there's no dialogue here. I've heard people call this a French movie, but it's also directed from a Latvian director. So is it Latvian or is it French? Sort of in the same regard as maybe something like The Substance. It's like, well, it's directed by Corley Farjan, but it takes place in America. It has to be more. Does that make it a French movie or an American movie? Does it, look at Amelia Perez, which is being submitted by France because it has a French director, but it takes place not in France, in like Mexico and America. Or City of the Sacred Fig that's being submitted by Germany, which takes place in Iran. I mean, like, if you're thinking about what is the native audio description track that you would go for here, well, there's no language here to define it. So when you've made a film that is widely accessible to all languages, the question is, when you submit it, shouldn't this be the most accessible film? Because you don't have to worry about dubbing anything. All you have to do is hire somebody to produce an audio description track for the film. Like, there's no dubbing. The battle over these films that come from other countries is, I think, largely always related to, well, we don't want our actors dubbed, and them not understanding that it's worse for me to sit there and listen to somebody speak in a language that I don't understand versus having it translated for me. At least then I can appreciate the story, appreciate what it is trying to do, and I get to see some really interesting international perspectives. Here, there's no argument to not audio describe this film. It does not exist. I feel like I'm like I'm Katie Harrod in Mean Girls. The answer is it does not exist. There's no reason for it, which is why I wanted to talk about this movie. I did sit through it. It does. I mean, sound effects. Yeah, I guess. Cool. There's not much of a score. Not one. I mean, like, compared to the score that I heard for like The Wild Robot, I really love The Wild Robot score. But Flow felt more like sound effects. And I'm sitting there thinking about, well, would I nominate this for sound design? Like, I'm thinking, like, how would I even consider Flow as a blind person? But, without the context of where these things are coming from, I feel even comfortable, putting it in for sound, simply because I don't know if it's necessarily matching everything perfectly that's on screen. So it's an odd film for me to consider, but it's an important film to talk about because this film's in theatrical release. People are watching it. People are trying to push it as being like the alternative to The Wild Robot. And last year, we didn't take Boy and the Heron seriously enough. Everybody thought Spider-Verse was going to win, then Boy and the Heron won. And I don't want 2 years in a row for us to have a non-accessible film win animated feature. Sorry, I'm I'm tipping my hat here, but I don't think it's that big of an ask to ask for accessibility for films trying to be considered for the Oscars outside of the international category. Specifically, I think all of them should be, but I think bare minimum, if you're going to try to break into an animated feature, your silent film with no dialogue, it's at this point, it's offensively lazy. So, to just not put any consideration into that in terms of your theatrical release, this film is the most accessible film due to the universal way that film is. This film translates to people in America. This film could translate to people in Brazil. This film could translate to people in China. This film could translate to people in South Africa, to people in Iran. Like, it literally could go everywhere because it's just a film about a cat. Well, animals in general, but I think primarily a cat. Some people have called the cat Flo, and I'm like, I don't know that. I mean, if nobody speaks and nobody calls the cat Flo, how do you know that the cat is named Flo? I think that's just making a leap. But yeah, I can't even give you an idea of where a grade would be because I got nothing from it. So my grade is just unwatchable due to lack of audio description. And I would love to see that change. I'm blind and I matter. And there are people like me that matter, and they would like to see movies like Flow and not have our choices limited to us by people choosing which films we can and cannot watch due to accessibility, lack of accessibility. So make it so, make it right, make it flow, go with the flow. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the other side.